On today's show, we are going to break down and grade the Anaheim Ducks 2024 draft class and their prospect pool as a whole.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm Sebastian High, the Director of European Scouting over at Dobber Prospects, typically joined by Hadi Kalakesh, who is still down with illness at the moment, so wishing him a speedy and swift recovery. But on today's show, we're going to be diving deep into the Anaheim Ducks prospect pool. The 2024 draft class will be assigning some grades to the drafting and the prospect pool as a whole, and we'll be looking a little bit more into the future and look at what they might do in the 2024-25 NHL season, whether it be NHL rankings and where they end up overall in the standings, or about the actual production of the young players playing NHL or AHL minutes. But before we jump in, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in free bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's kick things off for the episode here by diving into that 2024 NHL draft class. And Anaheim, as per usual, decided to make things a bit chaotic and dramatic on draft day. The Anaheim Ducks are never afraid of picking the player that they want in the draft slot where they are selecting, whether or not it's a player who's actually projected to go at that pick prior to the draft among public rankings or even in the private sphere. Last year they went out and ahead and picked Leo Carlsson at second overall ahead of the projected second overall pick, Adam Fantilli. A couple years ago, they also went out and picked Mason McTavish, quite a few slots above where he was projected to go. And that pick has been aging fantastically well. He's been a stalwart, the top six center, and continues to be looking to take strides in his development this upcoming season. And this year, at third overall, the Anaheim Ducks went out and picked Beckett Sennecke, the 6'3" power forward right winger, who has grown about 6 inches in the last year and a half, and has had to get used to his bigger frame and get accustomed to playing at that size. Has been a really big late riser in this draft class. He's a fantastic elite level puck handler, and his combination of quite mature habits off puck. He's very intelligent in the offensive zone. He applies pressure and physicality. He's really making use of his frame in that aspect specifically. He reads play well defensively, and with the puck on his stick, he can create in ways that very few NHLers can, leveraging his handling and reaction speed to just dissect defensive structures. He can get through 4 defenders and get through a lone on goal at the end of it. It's happened quite regularly at the OHL level. And while he still needs to learn how to build play a bit more incrementally and be a bit more planned in most of his offensive rushes rather than a pure improviser, the foundation of skill and habits and tools that this player has are absolutely fantastic. And taking the swing at third overall is bullish, but it's certainly Anaheim continuing their trend of simply believing in the players that they like the most, that they think are going to be high-end NHLers. And Beckett Sennecke will be playing fantastic hockey alongside some defensively capable centermen as well in Leo Carlsson or a Mason McTavish. And those are also players that are going to be able to feed him pucks, allow him to practice his goal scoring ability a little bit, but also create time and space for him to leverage that handling skill. I'm very excited to see what Beckett Sennecke is able to do at the NHL level, but first, he's still going to need a couple seasons of development, starting off in the OHL now, going back to the Oshawa Generals, and just picking up where he left off as a dominant playoff performer, dragging his team to the OHL finals, which he unfortunately missed to injury. At 23rd overall, the Ducks also selected one of the best picks of the entire draft, in my opinion, snatching Stian Solberg, trading up with the Toronto Maple Leafs to snag that 23rd pick. And Stolberg is a fantastic fit. Not only is this a player that I believe deserved to have gone a lot higher than he did on draft day, he ended up at 14th on my final rankings because of his combination of high-end mobility, like violent physicality, strong defensive impact, and a lot of runway in developing his on-puck game as well. He was playing like 30 minutes a night at the pro level in the Norwegian Pro League this past year, and he's transferring over to Sweden, and he'll be playing SHL minutes this upcoming year, which is going to be very exciting to see what he does and how he develops in a bit more of a role that reflects his capabilities, where he isn't being triple shifted every single night. And Färjestad is a very strong development system as well. So I'm curious to see how that 6'2", 205-pound left shot defenseman is able to develop his game. But he's also a great fit for Anaheim's defensive core. There's already a lot of high-end skill on the blue line, whether it be Pavel Mintyukov or Olen Zellweger, and adding in Solberg as a steady two-way piece who can punish players with his physicality. It can bring a really reliable defensive impact and has so much runway to develop into a high-end top four, potentially top pairing piece at the end of the day. This is a fantastic selection, no notes whatsoever. In the second round, Anaheim went out and selected Lucas Pettersson at 35th overall, which is a very interesting pick. Pettersson is a really pacey, speedy player. He loves to play with the puck on his stick at his highest speeds. He can create as well at those high speeds, tearing through the J20 League this past season. And while I do still have some questions about his impact when he's not going at his top speeds and he's slowing the pace down, I think his handling and playmaking ability aren't quite as strong when he's not going at top speed. There's still a really interesting basis here because the handling ability is strong. The speed is fantastic. The two-way impact's very good as well. The defensive ability is a clear area of strength. And he scored 27 goals and 57 points in 44 J20 games last season with Modo. And I'm curious to see what a potential SHL season is going to look like this year. The combination of competitiveness and mobility is really interesting. And he can play both at center or on the wing. So he'll be an interesting one to track in terms of development. I think that if he really hits his upside, you're looking at a second line piece, but more than likely a third line contributor. In the third round, they also went out and selected 3 different players. They had 3 picks in that range, starting off with a big physical QMJHL forward in Maxim Massey, 6'3", 190 pounds, who was projected to go into in the first round at the beginning of this draft cycle, but it fell a little bit over the course of the season, despite putting up 36 goals and 75 points through 67 games for the Chicoutimi Saguenayens in the QMJHL. This is a guy who plays with grit and physicality. He's a strong forechecker. There are flashes of really good playmaking ability in his game. He has a pretty good release as well. I don't really see the top 6 potential in this player, but in terms of a bottom 6 checker with a really heavy shot, power forward ability, and potential as a sniper if he really hits, I think Massey is a really, really good value selection in the third round. They also went out and picked Ethan Procession from the North Bay Battalion in the OHL, a 6'2", 190-pound right shot centerman who scored 36 points through 62 games this season. So the production hasn't been the most fantastic thing in the world, but he's a really physical player who uses his frame to box out opponents, and he's able to create offense out of physical situations. He's always trying to disrupt play. He's very engaged off puck, and he's the type of player that you want to take a swing on with that combination of physicality, intensity, and being very young for the draft class, only turning 18 on July 11th. So very young for the class. Interesting toolkit. He'll be just developing in the background with the North Bay Battalion in the coming years. But the final pick in the third round for Anaheim was Terrence Smith, a really fun left shot defenseman, average sized, but a really dynamic puck handler with flashes of high-end offensive potential, who was also able to really refine his two-way impact over the course of the season, keeping a really tight gap in transition when defending the rush and getting involved on cycle defense as well, and being relatively consistently engaged. There are definitely some games where he looked a bit passive, but as a whole, I think he's a fantastic player that I would have picked a bit earlier than this where he fell. So strong value again for Anaheim, which seems to be par for the course for the drafting strategy in the mid to late rounds. And yeah, I think overall is a really good third round haul for the Ducks. Last but not least, we're going to wrap things up here with the 4th, 6th, and 7th round picks. Alexandre Blais, an undersized forward at the Q, was the 100th overall selection on draft day. He's 5'10", 154, but really skilled and nifty. He's a player who thinks just as fast as his feet move, which is a really nice combination. And his handling ability is also around that same level. So really pacey puck handler with a lot of speed and really good reading of play, who scored 84 points in 68 QMJHL games last season. Pretty old for the draft class, a November 15th birthday, but an interesting swing on a highly offensively gifted QMJHLer in the mid rounds. They also picked Austin Brunevik, a big right winger from who's committed to St. Cloud University in the NCAA. He's a D+1. And he's 6'4", 201 pounds, really good puck handler, pretty smart player as well with the puck on his stick. And he scored 71 points, including 40 goals in 61 games in the USHL for the Madison Capitals last season, which is an interesting type of profile to take a swing on. And last but not least, we have Darius Uljanskis, a Latvian left shot defenseman who is also young for the draft class, an August 25th birthday. He's a pretty mobile puck moving defenseman who played in the J20 League in Sweden last season, logging 11 goals and 29 points through 45 games. Also played at the World Juniors and the U18 World Championships for Team Latvia. And he's an interesting type of profile, like the mobility, the youth, the offensive involvement that really improved as the season went on. He has a 6'2", 194-pound frame as well. Pretty interesting profile of player to add in the 7th round. But I think as a whole, this draft class is quite strong, even if it was very bullish with that first third overall selection. I would still give it an A- grade as a whole. I know some Ducks fans might be a little bit confused about them passing on guys like Demidov and Lindstrom, but Beckett Sennecke has fantastic potential, and yes, he's a bit further away than those previous players in terms of his development, but the flashes of elite level offensive skill that he showed, especially in the playoffs in the OHL, were truly superb. And I think an overall A- grade is quite fitting for this draft class. They got a lot of quality for each draft slot as well. And yeah, I think it's a strong addition to the prospect pool. And we'll dive deeper into that prospect pool in the following segment, looking at which players per position could be really impactful pieces in the medium to long terms for the Anaheim Ducks. But first, a quick word from our sponsors over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophies also what keeps your ride or die alive. With eBay Motors, you have everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, LED headlights, and far more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, eBay Motors will always have exactly what it is that you are looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, which is available to U.S. customers only, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Alrighty, let's delve into this prospect pool here in the second segment, and we're going to break this down by position. So we'll start off with the forward prospects that are very notable, followed by defense, and then goaltending, and then we'll also talk a little bit about the areas of need in the prospect pool where Anaheim could still add, whether it be via trade or in the upcoming draft in 2025, as well as the overall grade for the prospect pool, which does not include the players currently already in the NHL. So no Mason McTavish or Leo Carlson, but still including guys like Cutter Gauthier. Starting off here at forward, obviously Beckett Sennecke, we just talked about him a bunch. He's a really valuable piece to add into the fold, likely going to be a dynamic top six winger long term, adding some power elements and grit on top of that finesse and skill and combination of playmaking and goal scoring ability that he brings to the ice. But also Cutter Gauthier, who is likely going to be a full-time NHLer this season, following that trade from the Philadelphia Flyers and in that whole saga. But he's going to be a really interesting piece to add into the fold. He's going to bring a level of physicality and goal scoring prowess that Anaheim quite clearly values, as they've shown in the past couple draft classes, whether it be adding Mason McTavish or Beckett Sennecke. And I think that Gauthier fits really nicely into that team identity as a long-term top six, probably left winger, but potentially center. And that versatility is also going to help whenever injuries arise. But his goal scoring ability is a key area of strength. He's very smart in his off puck movements. And he's going to bring consistent top six impact for a really, really long time. Lucas Pettersson also deserves a mention here. As I mentioned, the speed, the two-way impact, the combination of puck handling and playmaking ability are all areas of strength in his game. Definitely still needs to work on the cycle offense a little bit and slowing things down on top of just speeding things up and learning to shift gears a little bit and be more deceptive in his attacks that way. But he could be a really nice middle six piece down the road. Nathan Gaucher is another really fun player, the 6'3", 207-pound right shot centerman who played in the AHL last season, logging 10 goals and 25 points. Will be looking to build off of that season this upcoming year as a power forward, like centerman with a real strong two-way impact. He could also be a long-term like 3C or 4C for the Ducks, or even transition to the wing. He's quite versatile in his play in that sense. Beyond him, you have some raw skill in Yegor Sidorov, who was selected as an overager just over a year ago at the draft. From the WHL, really skilled, nifty puck handler, could really bring some offense in a middle six capacity. Same thing kind of along the lines of Niko Mijatovic, who has a bit less skill, bit more of a power foundation, also WHL based. And he was a second round pick from last year's draft, who, again, a middle six projection would be the hope if you're an Anaheim Ducks fan with this player. Same can be said as well with Maxime Massé, who we just talked about. That combination of physicality and intensity and playmaking flashes and two-way impact is really quite interesting with Massé. But to delve into the defensive pool a little bit, we're getting into really interesting territory. Olen Zellweger, who already played just over 20 games in the NHL last season, but wasn't a full-time NHLer just yet, which qualifies him for this prospect pool. He is going to be fantastic in the NHL this season, one of the most dynamic and intelligent offensive defensemen who's able to blend elite level skill with elite level mobility so seamlessly, so intelligent as well, and being able to take space and time away from players in the defensive zone, leveraging that mobility to just suffocate players while defending the rush. And I think he's going to be a top four piece for a really long time there in Anaheim, potentially already as of this season. Beyond him, you have Stian Solberg, who brings that physicality and violence to the equation. And he could also be an NHLer in about like 1 to 2 years. I wouldn't be shocked if he's one of the first players from the 2024 draft class to be playing consistent, reliable NHL minutes. Tristan Luneau will also be looking to be an impact player in the NHL this season already. He played 7 solid games in the NHL last year, but missed a lot of the year to injury, unfortunately. But we'll be looking to bounce back this upcoming season. And with him, it's the intelligence. It's being a very strong distributor of the puck, using his mobility and intelligence to take space away from opponents as well in the defensive zone. And his former QMJHL teammate, who's also in the Ducks organization, Noah Warren, brings a bit of a different style to the mix. He's also highly mobile, but he's physical, he's violent, he crushes opponents rather than just suffocate play. And while he needs a couple more seasons to develop, I'm very curious to see how he turns out. He might be one of the more entertaining number 4, number 5 defensemen in the NHL when all is said and done. Tyson Hines also brings that mobility and physicality combination to the mix. Anaheim loves drafting out of the QMJHL, especially for those big, mobile, intelligent defensemen. And Tyson Hines is certainly up that alley. He could also be an NHLer in relatively short term for the Anaheim Ducks. And Terrence Smith, as we mentioned in the past segment, is another very interesting, mobile, skilled two-way defenseman with high-end offensive flashes. In terms of goaltenders in the pool, Lukas Dostal has obviously graduated at this point to the NHL, but Kalle Klung still remains in the system as a goaltender in San Diego with the Gulls, and he could still take a couple of steps to be a projected like 1B type of NHL goaltender. And I'm curious to see how his development continues, because the raw tools and frame are really intriguing with that player. And I think that as a whole, if you take a step back and look at this prospect pool, it's strong, like especially considering that a lot of the players that are in this like group of young talented pieces that are going to be part of the core long term are already in the NHL, whether it be Carlson or Mintyukov or McTavish. The fact that the prospect pool remains this good without those pieces bodes very nicely for the development of the Anaheim Ducks. I think as a whole, I would give it the same grade as I gave the draft class, an A-. The raw prospect pool could use maybe one or two more like elite level talents. But again, those players are already in the NHL, so not entirely fair to give it a poor grade. But an A- is still one of the stronger grades you're going to see given out in this series. And I think it certainly encapsulates what the system is. I think it still might need like that elite level skill, maybe a top right shot defenseman. There's a lot of lefties in this system on the blue line, but you can always play one of them on their offside, and everything kind of falls into place if you do that. And maybe another like one or two potential top six forwards. You're going to see them go after that type of profile in the next draft, I'm sure. And yeah, I think it's a strong prospect pool with very few warts or holes in it. And they project very nicely as a potential contending group in the coming half decade. But that wraps things up here for the second segment. We're going to look a little bit ahead at the 2024-25 season with some expectations for this team and potential like point projections for the young stars as well. But first, a quick word from our sponsors over at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I just never want them to stop. But in the summertime, where it's the off season for so many of these major leagues, we get fewer and fewer games. But FanDuel still lets me to get in on the action and get sports going whenever I want them to. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood for them. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a free boost or bonus every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone daily all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer, whether that's taking big swings on underdogs, like taking your swings at the Euros or the Copa America in soccer, or whichever other league you're interested in, whether it be Major League Baseball or even the PGA. The choice is yours with FanDuel. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Alrighty, let's wrap up the show here with the final segment looking ahead to the upcoming season. I think that Anaheim will be aiming for a finish in the bottom 8 to bottom 16, so still missing out on the playoffs, but taking a significant step from third bottom in the league. These past two seasons, they've been around the basement, but they now have a lot of pieces to add into that NHL fold. Having a full healthy season of Tristan Luneau, as well as Olen Zellweger, as well as Pavel Mintyukov, really has reinvigorated that defensive core in Anaheim. And building up from the blue line at forward, there's so much to be excited for, whether it be Leo Carlsson taking a step, Mason McTavish taking a step, and his offseason workout routine is looking fantastic. He is looking absolutely shredded and ready for the NHL season to kick off in October. And you're even going to have some influx of talent there with Cutter Gauthier entering the mix. You might see Trevor Zegras traded still, and he might get an interesting return with another player that can plug in to that top six for the Anaheim Ducks. And I think there's a lot of skill and talent and intelligence in this young core for this team, and continuing to foster their chemistry on the power play as well as at even strength, I think is going to bode really nicely both for the future, but also for the development of this team within this next year. I think you're going to see them take a real step forward. And while contending for the playoffs might be a bit of a reach this year, you are going to see them play some better and more mature hockey than they were playing last year, with some added skill and dynamism as well, coming from all areas of that lineup. I'm looking forward to having a full season of Lucas Dostal in net there as well, continuing that trend of young players stepping up. And yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that chemistry builds, especially on that top power play unit. Obviously, you're going to have Frank Vatrano as a trigger man there, but you add in Leo Carlson and Mason McTavish, as well as Pavel Mintyukov. You could either add in a second defenseman with Olen Zellweger into that mix, or go forward with a guy like Cutter Gauthier. Or you could go with a different veteran presence as well. It could be Troy Terry in there. There's a lot of possibility on the power play, but I'm looking forward to seeing the type of chemistry continuing to be built on in this young core at that NHL level. And especially learning how to play on the puck, learning to be creative offensively, and to really create things out of nothing with a bit more space and time on that man advantage, I think is going to be really exciting for this team. And really taking that next step is going to be very fun to watch, even as a neutral like partisan here towards the Anaheim Ducks. But let's wrap things up here with a couple of point projections for some of the young studs in this organization. And we'll focus on the guys that are going to likely be playing NHL minutes this season. Obviously, Leo Carlson will hopefully get a full healthy season this year. And if he does, I'm hoping for something around the 20-goal, 50-point range for his development. He might even take a step beyond that, but especially if they just keep easing him into that NHL role on the second line, playing behind Mason McTavish in that center depth chart. I think that this type of production range would be fantastic. And if he's able to outshine that, even better. Pavel Mintyukov is going to get another season with big-time offensive minutes at even strength and on the power play, and I could see him scoring like 10 goals and 45 points. I think this is a fantastic offensive defenseman whose defensive impact also kind of goes unheralded at times. He's a fantastic player that I think has real number one defenseman upside at the end of the day. And when you add in Olen Zellweger to the mix as well as the other high-end young offensive defenseman in that organization who combines that elite level mobility and intelligence and skill, who could even also score 10 goals and 35 points this season, I think you have a fantastic left shot defensive core to build around in the short term. Like as of this season, I think they're going to be super electric, entertaining as anything, and also quite effective as far as a rookie or young NHL defenseman can go. And last but not least, I think Cutter Gauthier is going to hit the 20-goal milestone with the Ducks this season. Maybe another 20 assists added to that for 40 points, maybe eased into a middle six or second line role to start off with. But he's a really, really strong type of player, power forward elements. And I think he's going to add a much needed dimension as well to the wing for the Anaheim Ducks along that line. And yeah, that wraps things up here for the episode, breaking down the Anaheim Ducks prospect pool, grading their draft, grading their overall prospect pool, and looking ahead at what might come in the coming season. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave us a comment. Let us know if you missed any players in this overview. Which prospects are you most excited for in making the jump to the NHL level? And what are your expectations for the big young studs that are going to be playing impressive NHL minutes this upcoming season? If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please make us your first listen of the day. It is always much appreciated. And for your second listen of the day, you can head over to Locked On Sports Today, a 24-hour news show that breaks down every single sporting news you could possibly want to have access to. I'm Sebastian High, the Director of European Scouting over at Dobber Prospects, typically joined by Hadi Kalakesh, the Director of North American Scouting at Dobber Prospects, and we hope that you tune back in shortly.